Welcome back, everyone. Today, we are unpacking a truly fascinating explainer. We're looking at a deep dive meditation led by Pastor Jeevan Kishore Gurram on the Gospel of Luke. Now, if you're the kind of person who loves seeing ancient texts broken down into really clear, logical frameworks, well, you're absolutely going to love how this organizes the life and mission of Jesus. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Okay, to really grasp this, we have to start with the central question driving this entire study. When you read the Gospel of Luke, who exactly is the Jesus being presented? Understanding the specific lens is literally the key to unlocking the rest of this explainer.
So, the core premise here is incredibly distinct. This meditation highlights how Luke frames Jesus as the perfect Son of Man. And listen, this isn't just some casual title. It's the absolute foundational theme of the whole study. It presents him as the ultimate, flawless example of humanity. Literally everything else we're going to talk about today stems right back to this one big idea.
Here's our agenda for today's explainer. First, the perfect Son of Man. Then, how it's rooted in verifiable history, followed by living among the people. After that, we'll look at suffering, glory, and joy, and wrap up with living out the message.
Section 1. The perfect Son of Man, understanding the core premise.
What's really cool about this study is that instead of just going chapter by chapter, it organizes the gospel into 4 chronological eras. We've got Era 1, where Jesus is located in history, Era 2, where he is involved with people, then Era 3, a major pivot where he voluntarily sets his face, and finally Era 4, where he endures suffering and enters glory. It's like a roadmap guiding us straight through the narrative.
Section 2. Rooted in verifiable history, foundation of the faith.
So, looking at this first era, the focus is super historical. The events chronicled in Luke, they aren't presented as abstract myths or, vague parables. No, they're grounded historical occurrences. A massive pillar of this whole framework is that the Christian faith is actually based on verifiable history.
And this brings us to a pretty stark contrast. You've got verifiable history on one side and blind belief on the other. The meditation points out that this was a totally deliberate choice in Luke's gospel, anchoring these events in a very real time and place. The whole point is that the faith is rooted in reality, not just blind belief.
Section 3. Living among the people. Compassion and service.
Moving right along into the second era, we get to see exactly how Jesus interacted with everyday society. He intentionally lived among ordinary people, demonstrating just immense compassion and serving those in need. And what's really striking here is the deliberate rejection of the chase for status or wealth. Instead, he chose this path of deep, practical compassion for the marginalized.
But, this ministry of living among the people doesn't just go on forever like that. It eventually reaches a very specific crossroads. The narrative hits this critical pivot point where the mission basically changes direction entirely. Entering the third era, Jesus, as the text says, voluntarily set his face. This marks a huge shift from everyday ministry to a laser-focused, unavoidable objective.
The explainer references Luke 9:51 here, noting that he resolutely heads towards Jerusalem. Now, this wasn't some accident. It was an intense, active choice to seek out the lost, and he knew exactly what was waiting for him at his destination.
Section 4. Suffering, glory, and joy. The climax of the mission.
Okay, now we're focusing on the dramatic culmination of this journey, and the source material's message is crystal clear here. The path to glory involves enduring suffering. Encountering trials and hardships, that isn't a mistake, and it's certainly not a detour. It's actually viewed as a necessary, completely unavoidable step before entering into glory.
So what does that mean in practice? Well, it requires standing firm in trials and actually embracing the path of suffering rather than just running away from it. But don't worry, it doesn't end in despair. This incredible endurance is anchored in the ultimate hope of Jesus' resurrection. That's the key. It gives all that suffering a definitive purpose and a truly victorious conclusion.
Section 5. Living out the message. Practical takeaways.
All right, so let's get practical. How does one actually live like Jesus based on this 4-part timeline we've been talking about? The explainer breaks it down into 4 everyday actions. Step 1, put God first. Step 2, serve others, just like we saw in his era of living among the people. Step 3, obey God's will, matching that intense resolve he had toward Jerusalem. And Step 4, trust him in all circumstances, especially when you're going through trials.
Now, let's be real. Executing those 4 steps all on your own sounds incredibly daunting, right? To actually accomplish them, this framework encourages relying heavily on the Holy Spirit in 3 very specific roles. First, as a teacher, to help you understand the path. Second, as a guide to navigate those tough trials. And third, as a helper to give you the actual strength to just keep going.
And by leaning on that help, the meditation points to a really fascinating outcome: finding joy in suffering. Because of that resurrection hope established earlier, hardship is literally never the end of the journey. True joy becomes entirely possible no matter what your external circumstances look like. It's a call for Christians to be joyful witnesses, even when they're facing serious hardship.
I want to leave you today with a final, slightly provocative thought that really encapsulates this entire journey. Based on this structured look at Luke, will you choose to find purpose and joy even right in the middle of your own trials? It's definitely a challenging framework, but man, is it inspiring to consider. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. As always, keep seeking, keep structuring that knowledge, and keep learning.